But you've cut... I took care to have a few of my sinners repent.
The country just went through a war. People want to be amused, not preached at.
In previous episodes, we've done two of Greta Gerwig's first directorial projects, Lady Bird and the Barbie movie, were both huge commercial and critical successes. However, right after Greta Gerwig made her highly personal directorial debut Lady Bird in 2017, she attempted a second project of completely different dimensions and scale. She set out to do her own adaptation of the 1868 coming-of-age novel Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. The classic story of four sisters growing up poor during the American Civil War in Massachusetts has been adapted to screen 7 times. The first adaptation was in fact a 1917 silent film directed by the British director Alexander Butler, and starring among other performers Daisy Burrell and Ruby Miller, two well-known Edwardian music theater stars of the time. It is now one of many lost silent films. Another silent film version by British director Harley Knowles, released in 1918, it was produced by Paramount with permission from Louisa May Alcott's estate, and is now also considered a lost film. One of the best-known adaptations of Little Women was the 1933 George Cukor pre-code adaptation, starring a young Katharine Hepburn 1 year after she arrived in California as Jo, Joan Bennett, Frances D., and Jean Parker as her sisters. Critics loved it, and to this day, many consider it one of the most timeless classics of Hollywood's golden age.
No, we never can be boy and girl again, Laurie. Those happy old times can't come back. And we shouldn't expect them to. We're man and woman now. We can't be playmates any longer.
Despite being produced during the early days of the Great Depression, it cost $1 million. 4,000 people worked on the film over the course of a year, and items were all authenticated for the 1860s. Even the home was modeled on Louisa May Alcott's Massachusetts Orchard House. Coming during the Depression, audiences were raptured by the tale of simple girls, perhaps unhappy in poverty, but realizing they have more than many other poor people, and that family is more important than money. It became beloved, so much so that the 1949 adaptation was an adaptation of the 1933 movie adaptation of Little Women, directed by Mervyn LeRoy and starring June Allison, Margaret O'Brien, Elizabeth Taylor, and Janet Leigh.
Ha! Ha! Rodrigo! Rodrigo! Ah! Save me! Save me! Rodrigo! Rodrigo! Save me! Save me! Save me! Ah! Save me!
Peter Crawford, Mary Astor of Maltese Falcon fame as Marmee. Of course, the comparisons of the 1933 and 1949 ones were not as favorable as they hoped. Despite winning an Oscar for set design and being nominated for another Oscar for the color cinematography, the code also made the 1949 version tamer and toned down the intimacy. This comparison meant that for a few decades until 1994, nobody attempted to remake it as a film. Although it was made for TV and adapted in 1950, 1958, 1970, 4 times by BBC alone, 1978 for NBC, 1980, 1981 made into a 26-part anime series, and then adapted by Miyazaki for a different Japanese anime series, Tales of Little Women, in 1987. Finally, in 1994, Gillian Armstrong released an adaptation starring Winona Ryder as Jo.
I find it poor logic to say that because women are good, women should vote. Men do not vote because they are good, they vote because they are male. And women should vote not because they are angels and men are animals, but because we are human beings and citizens of this country.
The 1994 version of Little Women was the brainchild of the seemingly unstoppable film executive, Amy Pascal. Pascal spent 12 years shopping around for a studio, despite being vice president of production at Fox, head of development at Columbia Pictures, and president of Turner Films. She just kept being told that people weren't still interested in the story of 4 girls. Finally, she hired Gillian Armstrong to direct Little Women as the president of Turner Films and convinced her to push for it too. Denise Denovi, famed producer of Edward Scissorhands and Heathers, was on board to produce this movie too, starring who else but Winona Ryder. Trini Alvarado, Claire Danes, Kirsten Dunst as Jo's sisters, Gabrielle Byrne as Laurie, and Susan Sarandon as Marmee. And then in 2019, Greta Gerwig premiered her spectacular adaptation. There was a lot of reluctance from critics who pointed out all the previous versions and declared they couldn't think of anything new that Greta would be able to do with it. In 2013, seeing it was time to adapt Little Women again, Amy Pascal, Denise Denovi, and Robin Schweikord all jumped on as producers for the new Little Women adaptation. Amy Pascal had pushed to get the 1994 Little Women made for 12 years. Robin had written it, and Denise Denovi, the famed Heathers producer, had also produced that one. Originally, they approached Sarah Polley to write the script and possibly direct, but she was busy at the time. In 2015, Greta Gerwig begged her agent to get her into the room with them. She got a meeting and was hired to work on the screenplay. After Lady Bird was met with a huge critical success and everyone was buzzing about Greta's directing, Greta announced she was going to direct her screenplay in 2018.
She came into the office and said, I'm going to write this movie for you. I'm going to direct this movie for you. This movie is going to be about money and economic independence for women and how impossible it is to be an artist. It's going to have dual timelines. Most movies about growing up are about leaving home. This one is about finding home and the adventure within the home. And it's going to be about all these female geniuses.
As a young girl, Greta was a fan of Little Women and had read it several times. In fact, she connected with Jo, a girl who wanted to be a writer just like her. Reading it as an adult again, she was horrified to remember that Jo stops writing in the end and just ends up getting married and having a family and opening up a school. However, Jo was clearly a stand-in for the author, Louisa May Alcott. Like Alcott, Jo had 3 very different sisters with different personalities. And her sisters, including one that died of scarlet fever at 23, were clearly who the characters were based on. Like Jo, Alcott was raised in a poor Massachusetts home, Orchard House. Her parents were highly eccentric. Her mother was one of the first paid social workers in Massachusetts. Her father was a famous schoolmaster, transcendentalist, and writer, friends with Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and Nathaniel Hawthorne. Her mother and father had made their home a stop of the Underground Railroad, constantly trying to help people despite their own poverty. Eventually, Alcott's father, who was always a man far ahead of his time, his ideas about having a plant-based diet, the notion that industrial pollution would damage the environment, a stand against then common corporal punishment of students, and not just abolition, which Amos arrived at after befriending William Lloyd Garrison, but integration of the classroom, a step too far for even free Massachusetts. All but one parent withdrew their children from the school. Amos and his wife, Abby May, brought their values, many of which would probably be called anarchists now, to their daughters, but none was more transformed than Louisa May. The main difference between Alcott and her protagonist Jo is that Alcott didn't stop writing. She also never got married or had children. Greta Gerwig pored over Alcott's letters, her personal writing. Alcott had worked as a nurse during the Civil War, a role she has her character Jo, a tomboy like Louisa, wishing she could do. While acting as a nurse, Louisa began writing for The Atlantic from the front line. After a few months, she got sick with typhoid and treated with mercury, which would eventually contribute to her failing health in a couple decades. Her letters home were collected and put together as a semi-fictional book called Hospital Sketches. After her health failed, she left the war front and began writing Gothic novels for various magazines.
What compensation? How do you?
We pay 25 to 30 for things of this sort. We'll pay 20 for that.
You can have it. Make the edits.
She also wrote romantic novels and sensation stories, more scandalous and shocking. These were all written anonymously under a pen name, of course.
Tell her to make it short and spicy. And if the main character is a girl, make sure she's married by the end.
Or dead. Either way.
Excuse me?
What name?
In 1968, Alcott had the idea of writing a book of children's poetry. Her publisher said he couldn't sell poetry, but suggested she could write a children's book that was more realistic. A book for young girls, as there hadn't been too many targeted to just little girls recently. She wrote a few chapters of what would become Little Women, but they both found it dull, until her publisher's niece found the chapters and loved them. They became incredibly successful. Louisa wrote the whole thing very fast and was, well, shocked would be an understatement. The major change pushed by her editor, Thomas Niles, was that Joe had to get married at the end, believing he couldn't sell a book where the female protagonist ends up single.
Trust me, if you decide to end your delightful book with your heroine a spinster, no one will buy it. It won't be worth printing.
I suppose marriage has always been an economic proposition, even in fiction.
Greta Gerwig noticed the character Joe and Louisa diverged when Joe was married. It didn't seem fair, and Greta Gerwig set out to give Joe justice after 150 years by changing the ending. She cast Saoirse Ronan as Joe. She had basically played a young Greta Gerwig in Lady Bird. Her sisters were Emma Watson as Meg, Florence Pugh as Amy, and Eliza Shanlin as Beth. Timothy Chalamet played Laurie, Laura Dern Marmee, and the great Meryl Streep as Aunt March. The other major change, the one that makes the film stunning, is that the timeline, which jumps between the girls' childhood during the Civil War, are now non-linear, playing with time as our memories do. And stylistically, the warm nostalgic tones of the childhood shots and cold color palette of the adult ones make for a visual story within itself. This is in contrast to the great warm nostalgic scenes cut across the film. With some mishaps, like Amy almost drowning after falling through the ice and Meg's curls being burned right before a party, most of what we see is warm, comforting, happy. Greta Gerwig took much of the dialogue from the book, but plays with the emotional tone, with the girls being far more realistic. Often sulky, sometimes aggressive, getting into the non-ideal tussles of sisterhood. Greta Gerwig's Little Women is a meditation on growing up, the ways in which women are still held back from realizing their ambition, even as there's far more avenues for women who don't just want to marry rich now, and the gap between childhood dreams and adult reality. It updates the story while staying fairly true to the text, and even more true to the text's author.
Women, they have minds and they have souls as well as just hearts, and they've got ambition and they've got talent as well as just beauty. And I'm so sick of people saying that love is just all a woman is fit for. I'm so sick of it.
Tonight's show is brought to you by Yabiga. A Balkan Rakia spirit, go to yabiga.com to order a bottle tonight. Anyway, before I introduce the panel, please like this video and subscribe to the Movie Night Extravaganza YouTube channel. Hit that bell to get notified whenever we're streaming. Also, we are now monetized, so if you have any pressing questions during this live stream, send us a super chat, which helps me keep the show running, and which I am obligated by international law, human rights law, to answer. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/movie night extra. All of our after parties are on there forever. We also have a new Discord and a Letterboxd HQ account, so those are two more places to follow along with us. Links are in the description. Okay, let me introduce the panel. Conan Neutron, host of Britonic Reversal, co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza, and frontman for Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends, neutronfriends.bandcamp.com. Later this month, the podcast is taking a couple-week break because we're heading to Caterwaul. Caterwaul Music Festival is going to be in Minneapolis from May 24th to 27th, Memorial Day weekend. Big list of rock bands, including Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. Link to get tickets in the description. J. Andrew World, illustrator, book cover artist, artist for Give Them an Argument, co-host for Movie Night Extravaganza, and Bad Takes. Lauren Chouinard is a writer and social media strategist who writes film reviews for Merry-Go-Round magazine and is on Letterboxd as Lonely Goat Herd. I, of course, am the friendly neighbor boy that befriends the four sisters next door, and your host, Forrest Miller. If the main character is a girl, make sure she's married by the end or dead. Either way, what's the difference? Am I right?
Oh my god,
that was good. That was good.
It's like Jerry Seinfeld, depreciation weeks. You gotta go like, what's the deal with Little Women? Married or dead? Am I right?
Welcome back to the show, Lauren. It's been a little bit.
Hey, I'm always happy to be here as your official Greta Gerwig correspondent.
That's right. Chief Greta Gerwig correspondent, as some say.
I'm wearing the same. I think I wore this shirt for the Barbie one for and Greta Gerwig.
I feel like Chief Greta Gerwig correspondent for the BBC would go hard. Like,
I think so too. I agree.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
for
So
the
BBC.
News, I'm
hire
Chief
Greta
Greta
Lawrence.
Gerwig correspondent Lauren Chouinard, and this is.
And
They have some audacious name for it. There's a BBC channel on the Roku, and every once in a while throw it on. Like, wow, they have really audacious names for these programs. It used to be the BBC was like, oh, it's so boring, and then they started competing with Sky News and whatever. Now they got these zazzy graphics and stuff shooting across the screen, and like, it's wild looking. Anyway, BBC, everybody, thank you.
You got to give them the bang for the buck because now you're paying for everything else, as like streaming services too. And every British person has to pay their, they have to pay their
telly fee.
Yeah,
You have to pay your fee for the telly.
I was gonna call it a tithe, but I couldn't remember that word.
I just really wanted to say telly, and I rarely get the opportunity. So, in civilized society.
Yeah, but the word spinster really does go like really hard in the.
That's my favorite word, man. Like, I feel like if somebody called me a spinster, like in real life, I would be so thrilled.
I used to think a Spencer was just a fan of Dead or Alive.
I thought it was somebody playing the that game where you spin the wheel and then you have to do like the
Twister?
Twister, but
Twister.
it's the person that spins the wheel every time in Twister. The interesting thing about this is like class and the fact that like being a spinster is all right or being a widow is all right if you're like rich, right? Like if you're poor, you're expected to just kind of get married off, and it's like your husband better be fucking rich because you don't own shit. Not that you own shit, even if you are rich, but like you don't own shit anyway. But if you're like a rich, like it was okay to be like a certain class of lady and not get married. But I mean, everyone would still look down on you. But like it wasn't like.
There would be judgment still, but it wouldn't be as bad. Yeah.
But I mean, but there's also if you were married and you like flirted with somebody else, or they decided you did, you'd also get judged. I mean, everyone was judging women all over the place anyway, right? Like,
there's no winning. There's no winning for anybody.
Well, and I think it does a good job of. I'm like almost fundamentally allergic to period pieces.
Oh, same.
Where people are like, this one's going to this party, and miss me with that. Like, I can't. It's not for me. Like, peace and love.
Pride and Prejudice is like, and I know this is a very unpopular opinion, but Pride and Prejudice is like a slog for me. So I'm with you.
I will say I did enjoy Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters.
And Sea Monsters.
Yes, the addition to Sea Monsters elevated the material.
Well, that's the same person, the same thing as like Pride and Prejudice and zombies, right? Like
yeah. But it's a little more H.P. Lovecraft.
I mean, everybody's so boring in that they might as well be zombies anyway. Am I right?
Put a sea monster in it. Let's jazz this up, people. Come on, we're trying to make magic happen. No, but like honestly, like period pieces, like it's usually it's like instant narcolepsy. For me, I'm like I can't hang with it. I'm not interested in it. It's not something I usually willingly seek out. So I spent a long time, even knowing who Greta Gerwig is and loving Lady Bird. I'm like, I'm not gonna watch that. I'm sure I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
And then people are like, actually, it's kind of rad. I'm like, okay. And I watched. I'm like, oh my god, that was rad. But
right.
Like, but it doesn't have any.
I feel like Emma Watson being in it too is like she's like a perfect period piece actress that you're like, this is gonna be like it's gonna be like perfect for the time, I'm sure, but like.
Yeah, it's well, and there are people that really like that kind of stuff, and that's fine, like look, not everyone's into like time travel and robots. I get it, like
what?
I know, hard to believe, I know, Andy, but I think it is so notable. This not only transcends that genre big time, but like it tells a story with honestly some pretty like good modern sensibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Without doing the thing that they did 1 year before this came out, where they tried to just do Little Women, but in the modern day. And everybody hated it. Like literally in 2018, and it was like a bunch of actors. Like it was like
was it black-sided or something? Because I wasn't even aware that happened.
Yeah, it was a bunch of actors that nobody knows, right? Like because usually the tradition is that you have like at least one or two, because it's been redone so many times. You have at least one or two like big name actresses. I mean, this has all big name actresses, but like the tradition is like at least one or two of them have to be like A-list. This had no A-list actresses, and they put it in today. They tried to do the thing they did with like Princess Diaries type things. So, like they put it into like today's world, and everybody was like, this sucks. And that was 1 year before Little Women came out.
Wow, how bummed must the maker of that be?
I know,
right? Like whoever it was that made that. Like
there's some long ass French name, so I didn't even end up putting it in the.
I saw that it
Even
existed
pronounce
because
it.
I wanted to watch like another version of it before I watched the because I don't think I saw the '94 version when it came out.
He was hard to find for a while.
I was aware
Yeah.
of it simply because Winona Ryder.
So yeah,
But
same
I
here.
never saw it.
So I ended up watching the anime, which is a trip, and it's Miyazaki, but it's Akira Miyazaki, who's not related to Hayao Miyazaki.
Oh,
in case,
really?
in case, yeah, in case people are wondering,
I
no,
thought,
it's
I thought written by Miyazaki, and I just assumed. I think.
yeah, no, Akira Miyazaki did mostly like adaptations of 19th century literature into anime. So he did like Wizard of Oz,
Right.
Little Women, Pride and Prejudice, and a few others that I can't think of.
Interesting.
But yeah, and he passed away a few years ago. So
All right, I'm not doing an adaptation of this conversation and bring it back to the movie we're talking about, which is Little Women, which is to say that I think that the fact that this film so clearly transcends any of the period piece stuff is rather impressive. And then it bums me out because like I watched it later. This like was competing with Joker at the Oscars, which I was like, oh, the most like worst dude possible. Learning all the wrong lessons movie versus.
They should have had Joaquin Phoenix though as Mr. March. Well, I like Bob Odenkirk as Mr. March, but they had him come in and be like, "Hey, what did I miss?"
and he had like the best laugh line in the movie too. Like it was so natural, But it was just like, oh, that is, yes, he needs a friend, and it should be Frederick.
Yeah.
Well, because he's stuck in the house with all the fucking women, right? I mean, like,
well, that's
you have to,
like, yeah, he's just like, it was nice being out there with dudes hanging out, killing Confederates.
Well, but like, I don't know, it must be tough to have like 4 daughters and your wife who like I'm sure like you dote on and you love, but like
and a sister.
It's not like you probably crave male friendship, and I don't think Mr. Lawrence, the guy, he wasn't there for the whole period where they became friends with Mr. Lawrence and Lori. So he's kind of, like he shows up back and like they're hanging out with the neighbors and stuff. And he's like, well, I've been at the Civil War this whole time, but I'm glad you guys have made friends, I guess.
Well, and so this movie does an interesting thing with the character of Lori because like Timothée like does a pretty decent job of like being like, yes, he's a rich kid, but he's kind of like a weirdo in his way. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when they try to get that, no, that's not what I'm saying at all, Andy.
Okay, I'm saying he's a fuck boy, and I think
right, wait your turn. Wait your turn. You can speak whatever nonsense throws into your head later. I'm saying that like I think it's notable that like a lot of times when people talk about they're eccentric, they're like an eccentric person. Like, oh, okay, so they just do whatever they want to do all the time because they're rich and no one will put a check on them, right? But that's not really the case with him. Like it's sort of like it makes sense in the story that he would become kind of so attracted to and kind of entangled with Joe in a way because it's almost like that's who he wants to be, but his version of that just as much as like, I mean, obviously she's like, totally beautiful, even when she's like dressed down. It's like, there's not much to say as far as that, but it's as much of a personality thing as anything. And that usually misses me. Usually when I see eccentric rich people being rich, I'm like, yeah, I get it. You're rich. And you can act however you want.
Yeah.
That must be lovely for you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed like watching his relationship with Joe unfold, even when there was that tension between them, because like I too have been wife zoned by my male best friend, and it's not easy, to have that like interaction with somebody where it's like they're confusing like genuine like human connection, because the thing about being rich is that it not that I'm gonna be like smallest violin for like the upper class or whatever, but it is a very, very isolating experience to have that much like resources at your disposal, and it then just kind of puts you in another like kind of realm. So when you meet somebody who you can really connect with, who sees you as a person and not just what you can get from that person, you start to see those people as like, oh, like these are like actually my people. And then you start to just kind of adapt to their life. And when you are dealing with like gender stuff, which obviously is like a huge part of this story, then you can start to conflate like real human connection with like so I own you now, and
Yeah.
and so I thought it was very interesting to see, especially toward the beginning, the ways that he would watch these girls interact, and it was just like it was less of a longing for a wife and more just a longing for like any kind of connection.
Connection, yeah, and I think it comes across when they've got their little like drama club in the attic, you know, and they induct him in, and like he immediately comes in and is doing like he's doing all the physical moves and stuff like it's clearly like he's happy to be in a place where, you know, like he can more or less be himself with like people that he enjoys being around.
Also, his shirt in that scene was so cunty. I loved it.
Well, and
He looked so good.
the story of his character is also pretty like isolated because, you know, and they touch on it a couple times within the movie, but like his dad ran off with the mom, who was an Italian musician, and the dad was also like wanted to be a musician, so he ran off to Europe where, you know, he married this Italian woman, got cut off by the grandpa, who was like, I'm not, you know, this woman's Italian, you know, like I which is you know, I mean, I guess back then not white or something, but you know, so
not as much as being Irish apparently, but that's a different.
And then, but then they died somehow, like in some kind of tragic accident or something.
Yeah,
and he's been sent back to America after living in Europe to live with his grandfather, who cloisters him in this attic because he's afraid that, you know, he lost his son, he lost his daughter, he doesn't want to lose his grandson too, so he's stuck in this attic. And then over time, the grandpa kind of softens up. And like
Chris Cooper, by the way, he's great in this role too. Like shout out to Chris Cooper, because there's a resting sadness with that guy that like that takes some effort to like just, you know, every movement is just like almost defeated, even with these like moments of like small kindness that he does, like gifting the piano and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, so the isolation is like, you know, so it's that, plus it's also the Civil War happening at the same time, which, you know, I think about like kids that grew up and like became like 18 or like 17, like I don't know, like ended high school, went into college around the time of like COVID. You're like, damn, that must have been really tough, right? Like your last little bit of time and the pandemic hits and you have to stay inside. You don't get to make those, you know, forge those relationships with people. But this is the Civil War. It lasts for like, you know, 4+ years pretty much of this whole thing happening. And then if you're not rich, you know, and you can just pay somebody $300 and like send a poor person to the war zone for you, you know, which is what you could do during the Civil War.
It was the equivalent of TaskRabbit of its time,
pretty much.
Oh my god!
But it's like a $300 like draft deferment, pretty much. But then they would just find and conscript a poor person like this.
To, like, conscriptor, I think they call the app.
And like so
conscriptor, but it only has the like
just the R.
The E, it's just the R.
Yeah, exactly. No vowels.
So he's like 16, 17 years old during the time the Civil War is happening, and you know the only people that are around, like their friends, are those insufferable fucking British kids, because those are like the only that they meet throughout it, and like you know, because those are the only other people really that are not being conscripted into the military too. So it's like this time of like ultimate upheaval that they're living in, already feeling probably pretty isolated. And the other thing is that the March family was originally supposed to be kind of wealthy. Like they're in, you know, like Aunt March is not like she didn't make her money on her own. Like that.
Yeah.
But they also were originally, and they kind of sunk their money into all these other projects and kind of lost their money and gave it away. And they're like living in this really Presbyterian thing. But they're supposed to be like a more upper class family than they are. Like they're just kind of living through a self-imposed and I guess luck-imposed poverty.
Yeah, because in the movie, because I haven't read all the associated source material or seen all the anime apparently, but like it seems like they're kind of like coming from like a poor working class sensibility, because there's the thing where like, oh well, you know, where Laura Dern's character comes back and was like, hey, you know, will you gift your breakfast to this needy family down the way, which is gorgeous and wonderful and so full of empathy. But of course, that the through line for that is also how one of the daughters gets scarlet fever and dies, which just goes to show you that, you know, there's empathy and there's sort of ruinous empathy. But it's definitely made clear that the neighbors are very well off, right? And by comparison, but like it isn't really made clear that they're like doing well necessarily. It's just that they're it isn't doted on, but I think that's fine because I think it gets that across in the like look at Florence Pugh's character, right? Who basically is more or less that one of the pivotal moments of the movie for me is this when she's like basically talking about giving up painting because there's like name the geniuses that are female, like that whole like back and forth, of which I think that Timotei's character's got some of the best lines in there at that point, as far as like being creative and pursuing the arts and doing so in a way that is from perspective of what gender you are, as well as just like not being part of the landed gentry that's like available to do that for you and having that opportunity, having those I'm the one that came up with it. I can't curse it that much, but but you get to what would the star rating be for? 5 out of 5 would consider.
5 out of 5. It was 6 stars. Good.
Swords, I don't know, muskets, right? Yeah, I don't know. Bayonets, 5 out of 5 bayonets. There we go. Got it in 3.
It would be really funny though. Like they keep updating. Like you have a rating on there. So like your drill sergeant or like your sergeant in the fucking army keeps like downgrading you. Like I'm a 1-star conscript. Like, like I didn't even want to be here. They're like yes, and we know
we've rated you appropriately. No, but again, like they did that. Like there's just not a lot of options for the future for creativity for these girls, right? Which especially like Joe especially being like the shining star talent out of them, but like look. It's not like she's the only one in that family that has talent, but there's sort of like a hard-minded pragmatism to a certain degree, or I should say era appropriate pragmatism that is really notable and kind of subtle. Like I didn't catch it as much with the Amy March character, and I think you can get a lot of that with that exchange between the two of them. I think, and I think there's a lot of exchanges between the two of them. But I think again that goes back to like Laurie being an interesting character. That it sucks to be like, oh, who's great in this movie? Well, these wonderful women. The dude, he's great, isn't he? But he is a good character, and like, and he's almost like a sounding board for them. And you see these unfulfilled and inarticulated dreams and thoughts and processes based off this guy that more or less like is in a way better position than them, but is dealing with a completely different set of problems. And I think that's. There's a lot to that, and there's a lot more nuance I caught this time than I did the first time.
It's very interesting because, and this is like a completely different genre of film and completely different note, but very like I think relevant to the fact that like these stories set back in Civil War times are so like still relevant to how like women express and tell their stories today. I watched a documentary the other day. I wrote a review on it for Merry Go Round magazine. If you guys want to check it out, on the documentary Girl State, which I don't know if you saw Boy State a few years ago.
Yeah.
Basically, so great.
Sounds like a dumb joke we make on this show. Yeah, when they're gonna have Boy State.
Well, when they got the Girl State. Well, it is here.
Boy State University.
Yeah. But what was very interesting about Boy State when it came out, and it was my favorite film of that year, was I think it came out the year after Little Women, but it was really interesting to see like the microcosm of what happens when you have like men in charge of everything, including like women's rights and liberties, like even in just like a mock environment. What I found very interesting about Girl State, and I wrote about this in my piece, is that it's almost impossible for you to have a discussion about women's empowerment, women's rights, and women's like furthering women in positions where they have agency and autonomy without mentioning men. You need a character like Laurie in Little Women because you need the context of the male privilege and the that the men and characters in this women driven story have, because it's just you need the compare and contrast. And what's very interesting about the documentary that I just watched and this movie is the men often in these kinds of tales don't really like think about the fact that they have all these rights and privileges until it's like thrown in their face and they're like, oh, I guess you do have a point. You don't have rights, I didn't even think of that. It's like not
Yeah, never occurred to me.
yeah, they're like, I guess you don't have rights. And it's very interesting. So I totally agree with you that, the importance of male characters in female driven stories, like it's almost like, you can't have women's stories without the context of the looming cloud that is patriarchy. Even if the guy is delightful, it still is. Andy doesn't think so, but I think that
It's whimsical oppression.
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta say, like one of the things I found interesting about the whole Amy story is that, like, during her lifetime, what would have been in the late 1800s in Europe, you saw an explosion of women artists. I mean, maybe not an explosion, but there was an increase throughout the decade. Because I was just double checking my numbers here. The salons across Europe had about 20% women from 1818 to 1877, but it increased from 1877 to 1890 because there was a lot of women impressionists that were included in that, and so it's just that whole like born too soon kind of thing. Like she would have been part of the vanguard if she stuck around with it.
Yeah, well, you see it with even like Meryl Streep's line to her. One of the first lines, when she's in Paris, she's like, "Oh, this liberation and this decadence has really, messed up Paris or whatever." And what she's talking about there is the fact that women are kind of more allowed to do what they want to do in society in Paris specifically, but like across Europe than they are here. There's different mores, there's different rules. You're not as bound to get kind of married and live in this kind of extremely Protestant ethic, because that's really what it is. It's this like diehard Protestantism that this family really has. Because they're not only living in this time, but they're also living in like Massachusetts. And Louisa May Alcott, who wrote the Little Women book, like her family can trace itself to the original settlers in Massachusetts. Like she has such a line to this extremely Protestant ethic. And I think the whole family, you see that with the way they give away their possessions constantly, and they're constantly talking about I mean, not so much God in the movie, but in the book more so, kind of the concept of God and like religion comes up in different
I'm glad that isn't all over this movie.
Yeah,
That would take me right out of it, frankly.
But it's not really in the sense of her feeling like, oh well, this is a religious person. It's more of like a religious.
I don't care. I just get sick of hearing about God in movies, frankly.
Yeah,
sorry.
So
resident secular humanist speaking up.
It pushes itself on more than just your religion. It pushes yourself into your entire worldview, and they're part of this like liberal Protestantism, where it's like they're very open to like ideas about like integration, which her like Louisa May Alcott's dad got kind of ran out of town because he started a school and then let one black child into the school as like a social experiment. He then left that area and started a commune, like an early like an anarchist commune. He was trying to make a utopian thing, and he went broke trying to accomplish that. Then he segregated the sex.
He got broke.
Like, so there's this guy comes from like an upper class settler background pretty much, and is constantly giving his money away in search of these like liberal ideal utopian things, like not hitting kids, which was like a novel concept. He was like an early fucking plant-based person who was like, you need to have a plant-based diet. Like he thought that's the only way that kids would grow up to be kind of big and strong. And everyone's like, no, you eat meat and stuff. And he's like, what about a plant-based diet? Like there's all these ideas that he had long before everybody else. He's kind of this strange kind of figure in American education, which is really what he's a schoolmaster that kept starting schools. But, even in free Massachusetts, which was a place where, you really were allowed to be a free black person, right? Like there was free black communities and like towns and stuff. Even there, they're like, whoa. You can't have white kids and black kids go to the same school. All the parents like came out with fucking pitchforks to, kind of run them out of town for a little while. Like her backstory is kind of, just really interesting with all of those concepts. So she's telling the story kind of her childhood, but then taking all those parts of it out of it. And she's also kind of her father in this because she was also a Civil War nurse, like the father is in this. So it's like, there's these all these things from her life are kind of taken from this story that she really didn't expect to be popular. Like she was just, kind of writing it for money. Like and I was like, oh, I'm gonna try writing this book because like, my adult novels have done so well. She was making like a good living off like the more scandalous adult novels. But there really wasn't anything for young girls to this extent in like popular literature. So she was trying something new. And it became extremely popular because the niece really did find it, just like in this movie, where the niece is like, "This is really good." She's like, "I don't think this is good," and the publisher's like, "Yeah, I don't think this is good really either." And the niece is like, "What happened to these girls?" And that's kind of how this thing came around. So I feel like all of that is infused into this, and so for Greta Gerwig to give this a more progressive, modern kind of sensibility does go along with the long history of Little Women as a franchise or a brand, I guess.
Well, I mean, each version of Little Women, at least the films, anyways, kind of spoke to the era where the first one was kind of dealing with the Great Depression era, scrimping and saving, and focused a bit on that, and people really related to them. But it was also kind of escapist for them as well, because there is a bit of like dreaming bigger that the girls had. In the 1949 version, that was a little more focused on the post-war decadence, and you see that a little bit more in the fact it's done in Technicolor and not a hair's out of place in that. And
what are you, the Ant and Little Women post-war decadence?
Yeah, I World War II, post World War II, man.
I understand. I'm making a joke. Yeah.
All right. And I actually have, I'm borrowing all this from a great YouTube that I watched that kind of compared and contrast all three of them. Because the 1994 one was the first post women's rights movement film version that we got, and you can kind of see that where they tried updating it, and whether some people did not, a lot of people actually didn't think it was very successful, like as a film itself. And that's
I mean, they didn't
I have not seen it.
They didn't make it again until 1994 for that reason. They're like, you can't remake Little Women, like until Amy Pascal came and pushed them to do this version and the 1994 version. Everybody was like, we're not going to remake, like they've already made Little Women like 5 times, like we're not going to remake it
lot
again.
There's a lot of adaptations of this, like it's pretty nuts, but that's one of the other reasons why it's so impressive as a film, that like I think it tells a story that like constituent parts are the same, but like it does in such a way that's both modern and kind of timeless and speaks to the issues of the now. And I think that's really hard to do. It, just like when someone was like, oh yeah, they're making a movie about Barbie, you're like, wow.
Yeah.
That's going to be really hard to do and do it well.
Yeah. And I think that like what's cool about Greta's version is, even though she used a lot of the dialogue, like, straight from the book, she's adding new dialogue that is like speaking very directly to modern audiences about economic realities. Cause we were just, hot off of a huge, period of turmoil, like in a pre-COVID world, but things were being turned upside down around the time that like story was getting shopped. And then also just limitations about, women historically being oppressed in these ways. A lot of these things are not so explicit anymore, but are still a lot of realities that women are still facing. And I think I said this during our Barbie broadcast, but I really do feel like the monologue that Amy gives in this movie about what are my options as a woman, like, this is what I'm left with. I thought that was actually a more effective illustration of Feminism 101 than America Ferrera's monologue in Barbie. Because
Justify. Yes.
It's just so like nuanced and it's not heavy-handed. It's just straight facts. It's like, I can't do this, can't do that, can't do that. So what am I left with? And women up until like not that long ago in our history weren't even allowed to like have a credit card unless they open it with their husband. Like things like this are like, we want to believe that was so long ago, and it was like during my parents' lifetime. That's crazy. And I think that there's just so much, even from what was happening back then, that really speaks to what women are still facing today. It's like, maybe the like, it's not so explicit, but even then it's a little more sinister that way. And I feel like that's why this movie connected with people so much.
Well, there's the term, and I feel like I said this during the Barbie movie too, but it's like, having it all, or like, which is both, having a career, because there's like up until recently, right? It's like you can either be like a career woman which isn't even a thing you could be until after World War II, really. But you could be like a career woman, or you could be a wife and mother. So there's the idea of like having it all. They're like, I want to have it all. Like they talk about it like in Mad Men a lot.
I choose
like,
neither. I choose being a bog witch, actually, personally. But it's
I feel like
true.
this movie not only like moves up within that, right, but it also wants to tell you that it's okay not to be both, right? Like it's okay to just focus on your career, because I feel like those two things are in tension in a lot of people's minds still to this day. It's like, well, I want to be like like a wife or mother, or I want to have this career and focus on that. And I like that they give Jo permission to really own her book in the end. She doesn't have to, like, if she doesn't feel attracted, or if she doesn't feel like love towards somebody, and you can always get married later, but like it's good that she ends up being able to own her book. A lot of people were like, oh, you can't change the ending to Little Women, but you do have the ending of Little Women in that flashback thing, and then she decides to discard it, kind of, but like that's
but it stays true to the story while giving context to why that has to be the end of the story. That's very clever. That like also puts it again in a modern context without sacrificing material. And again, having watched a couple very lesser period pieces not that long ago, boy, it's so notable when somebody does it right. And it's like, wow, this isn't like a joyless slog at all. This is actually enjoyable.
The only other kind of period piece that I really like is when they make the people real freaks. Like I like The Handmaiden. Like that was a fun movie to watch. That was like a period piece, but also like that guy.
Have we done Handmaiden on the pod before?
Yes. We did it last year. Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
Check that one out.
Yeah, when you just have like a hot chick like read porn to you and like just sit there and fan yourself and like, ooh, and that's your kink. Wow. Okay, I'm not here to kink shame.
I like modern freak period pieces, but like I like something like this where it's like it's smart, and like I read the first part of the book for this week. I couldn't really get through. It's not something that I like.
I was forced to read it in middle school, and
Same.
I couldn't get through it. It was really hard. And the thing is, like, I have seen almost every single adaptation of Little Women. I've seen the version from the 40s. I've seen the musical many, many times. I've sung
the anime.
No, no.
Oh, Andy asking the hard question.
I've sung "Astonishing" from Little Women the musical for so many auditions. I love the compilation of the girls always saying Christopher Columbus. I'll find that video for you guys later. But anyway, but yeah, but it was hard to get through the book. But what I liked about the movie, and kind of to your point, Forrest, is like this version has so much more like emotional depth and complexity to it, because it's talking about like, it's not just like rah-rah feminism, like she owned her book and everything was honky-dory, but it was also like the exploration of how people feel when they make unconventional choices. Because even then she does everything the way she wants to do it. She wants to like own that, but she says it herself. She's like, I'm lonely. Like there are trade-offs. There are trade-offs that come with following your dream. And it's almost like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. You know? It's like, it's not just so black and white all the time. Which is what I really appreciated about this story. I
think even more of those like just this before I like forget to add this to thing. I feel like even more of that isolation comes when you've made unconventional choices and you're famous. Like at least like maybe not well maybe not like famous and like rich, like ultra rich or whatever, but like when you've made a certain amount of money and people know who you are and you have like a name recognition, that adds its own layer of isolation. So I have to imagine like somebody like Louisa May Alcott who ended up dying somehow 2 days after her father died, and her father's last words were "come with me," and she's like, I can't, and then she died 2 days later.
I just got goosebumps, dude.
She died of. Okay. She died of.
So me and Lauren are going to be writing the fan fiction about this.
Yeah. Okay. Damn.
She died of a disease that she got, like tuberculosis or something during the Civil War, and she had like a flare up or something and died 2 days later, which is I guess it's probably the emotional stress of losing her father. But like, I'm sorry, but no parent should say "come with me" as their last words. Like,
No.
join me. Like,
Don't say that. No.
Play. Open up the true crime podcasts. We have to look into the situation. Yeah, that is wild.
That is insane. I actually don't. I want to tag on that previous point because I think that was something that I really got a lot out of the first time. That, like, especially Joe, and I guess to a lesser extent Amy, like their struggles are very relatable to any artist and musician. Like the unique challenges of being a creative person, it's very well presented here. It is lonely most of the time, and a lot of times you have to be your own sounding board. You have to be your own support system, and more so if you're happen to be female in the 1800s as well. But like it has not changed that much, and I think that that's very well presented here, and in a way that isn't preachy. It isn't like, hey everybody, ding ding ding, making a point over here. We're ringing the point bell, and we'll make the points.
So layered.
It shows you. It shows you, and even though you see like at least two situations where people are like inherently frustrated at counterbalancing life and connection with other people with creative pursuits, like it's done so in a way that isn't like this is the correct way. It's like, no, there's more questions than answers, and I think that's one of the things that elevates to me to being more than just like, hey, here's this book some broad wrote in the 1800s.
Yeah, well, and I was thinking about Frances Ha, and like we talked a little bit about that when we talked about I can't even remember which episode we talked.
Kicking and Screaming.
About. Yeah.
Well, wait, we didn't do Frances Ha? No, I guess right. We did Kicking and Screaming. Oh.
And that's like the most.
You haven't done Frances Ha yet?
No.
We got it. That's like one of my favorite movies. I think the one that resonates with me most out of anything I've seen in the last like year or so. But like, I think that you see that within.
Why does it feel like to me that we did it? I guess because we did Kicking and Screaming.
We spent a lot of time talking about it during Kicking and Screaming.
No, like literally, the Kicking and Screaming episode was actually just about Frances Ha. No, I totally, and we were talking about it a lot, like in the context of this episode, because you see so much of Greta's through lines in every single thing she's ever done.
Yeah, probably we talked about it during Barbie as well.
The end of Frances Ha, one of the things I appreciated, because it's bookending a period of her life, right? Like, she didn't force herself to get into a relationship with. I mean, she's still hanging out with like Benji, like her best friend or whatever, at the end of it, right? Like, and it's implied that they're probably going to get into a relationship. They don't force her into a relationship. The end of the movie ends on the note that she's kind of improving, but she isn't right where she wants to be yet. And I feel like you see that with the end of this and Joe. The same kind of thing where she's not forcing her protagonist into a relationship. She's not forcing her into something that she doesn't want to be in, out of character, just to have an ending of this classic, romantic kind of story. But she's allowing her to kind of reach the conclusion that the author reached, which is, I mean, pretty incredible. But you see that really early on in her writing.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. I think there's a really interesting thing too with just like, and what you were saying about, with Frances Ha and everything. It's not necessarily that it's like ambiguous, more so than it's just like it leaves room for, interpretation of what a life might look like when you make those choices. One thing that I find very interesting is, and we kind of touched at the top of the show, is like just the idea of like, if you're not married or like, God forbid, child free, which like I'm a very staunch like child free like advocate. Like I'm never having kids, and I've been that way since I was 16. I've been like, I'm not having children, and people look at me like I'm a freaking like criminal for even saying it. And I don't even understand, because I'm just like, it's 2023, like we should be over it. Like, but people,
considering how many forced birth laws are out there these days, maybe that's why.
God. Do you see that shit in Missouri this week? I was like, what the fuck?
Gnarly.
What the fuck? Oh, crazy. Basically, you're not allowed to divorce your husband if you're pregnant.
Yeah, isn't that great?
What's happening in Missouri? That's another podcast.
Well, that's like that, Republicans are always bitching about, and it's because I think so many of them are like on their like third or fourth wife. I mean, part of the reason, right? Like the whole ownership thing. Like Republicans are the newest thing that they're railing against after abortion. One of them is like no fault divorce. They're like, you should have to prove that you got beaten to like get a divorce or something. And it's like, Jesus Christ, dude. Like, number one, several of you will probably go down if that's the case. But I guess they're rich enough that they don't have to worry about that fact. But like,
Yeah. I'm in the middle of because I quit my job because I'm going back to school to become a therapist. So one of the things that I'm doing right now to kind of prepare for that is doing peer advocacy work for victims of domestic violence of any gender. But primarily it affects women. And we talk a lot about the history of domestic violence because it gives us a frame of reference for what women are going through today. And imagine being, during this time, of Little Women, that when the story is taking place, and it's like, you can't get divorced. You can't do anything. Like, you literally can't do anything. You're trapped if you do, you're trapped if you don't. If you have kids out of wedlock, you're banished. If you have kids, you can't take good care of those kids, you're banished. Like, there's just nothing you could do. But like, God forbid you just say, no, I don't I don't want to choose that life. And then everyone's like, but everyone wants to be like this. Everyone wants this life.
Right.
They're like burping their child that's like vomiting on their back. And they're like, Lauren, why don't you want this? I have a great life. And I'm just like, okay.
Their seventh kid just died of scarlet fever.
Yeah.
They're like, why do you want this?
Yeah. And they're like, everybody.
And by the way, did I mention it's hard being a parent? Let me mention that 1,000 times because that's never been mentioned before.
Seriously. It's like, it's. Yeah,
I think, but like, it's not only just in this case, right? And this is something that got touched on a lot in like interviews I watched of Greta Gerwig talking about this. It's not just that you that you can't do anything; it's that you don't own anything as a woman. Like like you don't unless you're somebody.
That's like that exchange between Lori and
and Amy,
right? Yeah, that's like that's that whole like right before that quote. It was like, even if you. What she say, even if you own property, it's their husband's anyway. Like that whole like just harsh realism of the time.
Yeah.
Like if you marry a lout, right? Like if you marry some guy that's just wants to live the life of like if you're like a richer woman or your family like leaves you money, you know what I mean? And you marry some lout that's just like, I don't want to work or like
Mark Ruffalo and Poor Things.
Yeah, like that's his money.
True.
The second you sign that marriage certificate, that's his fortune. Like that's. Like, and I don't know. It's just one of those like insanely crazy. It's not even like because now they do kind of halves, but like back then he just owned, like that's just his fortune outright. Like if you want to run away, you can, but number one, you're still married. Number two, you don't have a single thing in the fucking world.
You're right. That's a modern construct that, by the way, people bitch about all the time. Dudes especially, like, oh, I can't believe I have to give up half my money. Like whatever, and it's like, that's a complete. That's a complete modern construct, as is no fault divorce as well.
In Massachusetts, we choose the bear always. Historically, it's always been the bear.
Yes.
Always has been. But that's, again, we're talking about like that's I couldn't tell you when that exactly started, but that's like a last century thing. Like that's not like been around for forever.
Yeah.
And what she's talking about, like what Joe's talking about, Amy's talking about is like, like everything would belong the second she was married, like everything would belong to her husband, including the children.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's what that, marriage being an economic proposition piece comes for, because it absolutely was at the time.
But what's also
with no other options, right? Other than if you're rich, then you can just be like Meryl Streep and tell everyone to fuck off and like hang out in your like cool like house on your own. And honestly, I'm gonna go to Europe.
Vibe. She's such a vibe.
She did have a husband, I think, and he died. I'm pretty sure they hint at it at one point. She's like, I think she still did get married, but then her husband died, and then she just kind of was able to keep the fortune that she had. But I think she's supposed to be the
she's vibes and talks trash,
like and they've kind of a lot of the what I understood from both like reading about her family, but also reading about like the book itself, they're supposed to have given up or lost a lot of that. Like they would have a lot of that same money that she has, but somehow they've either given it up or lost it or put it into
what is it she says?
Gave it away to charity and worked on other little pet projects.
Yeah, she says what I may not always be right, but I'm never wrong. Like that was that like that's everything you need to know about her personality, right? It's awesome.
Which Greta Gerwig had a quote in like this thing that I was watching about her writing, and she's like, a lot of the lines in this, you think about them being almost a little bit like musty, like they're on a throw pillow at like your grandma's house, and I'm pretty sure I've seen a throw pillow that says I might not always be right, but I'm never wrong.
Probably, like, that's big throw pillow energy.
Oh, this is My Little Woman. This is borscht. She's been headbutting me for 30 minutes. I was like, maybe she should make an appearance.
There you go. There you go.
There we
But
are.
there's also like within this, right? Like the Emma Watson character, like like Margaret, like she ends up marrying a guy that can't sustain a family. The same.
Yeah, the tutor. She marries the Timothee's tutor.
Yeah.
And so like that's like if you make the wrong choice, that's the situation you're in.
Who has the best? One of my favorite laugh lines, by the way, is that like when they're first in the house and like, oh, you got all these books. I would never leave if you had these books. Oh, there's a piano, there's this, there's that, and there's just like low, and there's a greenhouse too, and like we don't care.
And everyone just ignores him and is like, okay, so I'm gonna go.
Well,
and it's so hilariously awkward.
Really funny.
There's a couple moments in that scene because there's a thing where he's like, man,
he's trying to like he's trying to like get into the conversation. What he does is just like
well, also the first time you see Timothy in this movie, right? Like he's standing on the chair and he's looking out and he's like, there's a girl out there, and he's like, there's no, you're lying, like, there's no girl out there, and then he looks like, there is a girl out there, and the two of them just fucking creep in the window for a few minutes.
Exactly.
Like,
well,
like
but it wasn't any YouTube back then. I don't know what to tell you.
It also reminded me of Shaun of the Dead when he goes, there's a girl in the garden. Like, there's a girl in and there's the first zombie that you see. You got to be careful when there's a girl in the garden,
That's true.
But yeah, so that guy has several moments within that are like awkward. Like he clearly doesn't fit.
That James Norton, right? That's that actor. He's in like a Black Mirror episode that was pretty good.
Oh yeah. I was wondering where I saw him before. Yeah.
I think everybody's pretty familiar, who we've seen in something else except for the girl who died, because but apparently she's like a director she's like done a bunch of shorts in Australia, directing them, which is good for her.
The one who played Beth.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool.
So like maybe we'll hear from her in a few years. So because she hasn't done her feature length debut yet. So
Oh, she was in Old, apparently.
Yes.
M. Night
She's
movie.
playing Old.
I don't remember. I barely remember that movie. I got too old, apparently. I have Alzheimer's. Thank you.
That movie did age me. It's true.
It's
M. Night, I feel like every time I watch a new M. Night movie, I lose 5 years off my life. So
sometimes you just go to the beach where you turn old and can't remember anything anymore.
It's like, oh man, it's just like watching an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Exactly.
Yeah, I she's the only one that I don't recognize because like even the publisher is her dad from Lady Bird.
Tracy Letts, yeah.
It's Saoirse, and I didn't think about that until I watched Lady Bird this weekend again, and then I watched this again, like the other day, and I was like, oh shit, that's her dad.
Yeah.
Now he's her publisher.
Yep.
A close enough relationship, like
family affair. I think that there's, and justifiably, a lot of focus on Joe in this movie, but I think that I agree that I think that America Ferrera soliloquy in Barbie is good. Don't get me wrong, even if it's a little bit like, oh god, all right, here's the one that like.
I'm not a hater. I'm not.
Still with her crowd is gonna love this, but the. There is more nuance and depth to, like, honestly, like, most of just Joe Marsh's whole deal, because it isn't like she's just being a delivery system for spouting slogans or anything. She's like living it the entire time. Like that whole what'd she say? I can't get over my disappointment at being a girl.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
So real.
Today she might have just been trans. We might have just gotten trans Joseph.
Joe has mad non-binary energy, and I live, especially in the costuming for this movie. I'm just like, damn, she is giving non-binary realness in all of her. Like even in the skirt, I'm just like, damn, yeah.
Well, and I feel like it's almost like a classic thing with period pieces or things from like the 1800s. Like I feel like there was always these stories of like little girls, like young girls who would dress up as boy soldiers and go into like the Union Army and stuff like that. Like there were
5 out of 5 on Conscriptor, actually.
But like
Bowie has a great song about that.
Her thing where she's like, I wish I was old enough or was able to join at least as like a medic is like, if she was old, like she could have, like, you could still be a girl and do that. At least
Yeah.
you might get tuberculosis though, and then
True. Not very
a few
fun.
decades later, it's crazy. I didn't know what scarlet fever I knew what scarlet fever does to you, right? Like, but I finally looked up what scarlet fever was in preparation for this episode.
It's not great.
Scarlet fever is literally just
It's not great, folks.
It's not great.
Strep. It's strep. It's a strep infection that's gone too far, and like. So like literally her life could have been saved a few years later by amoxicillin. Like
Yeah.
because I was looking up like scarlet fever as like a public health thing, and they're like, oh yeah, just give amoxicillin, you should clear up in like 4 days. And it's like, damn, she had like recurring scarlet fever and everything because there was no no amoxicillin or penicillin or anything. Like,
penicillin or anything.
Thank God.
Everybody in this movie is just born too early.
Yeah.
For various reasons, including
Ahead of their time, born too early.
Well, I think it's interesting bringing up Emma Watson's character. I honestly think my favorite scene with her is the one with Joe, where it's like her wedding day, right? And she's trying to convince her not to do it. And the line that like sticks with me so much is that you'll be bored of him in 2 years and we will be interesting for forever.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, because it's sort of like, yeah, guy seems cool, you know. He's well enough, good enough looking, you know. He's not rich, like whatever.
Well, he's like the first guy that she really, at least that isn't British.
But it's not like he has like some deep, compelling conversationalist or whatever. But she likes him. You don't again, as it stated over and over again, you can't help who you love in this film, right?
Yeah.
But like, and then she drops
a broke ass.
What does he fuck?
Yeah. Never know.
But then she drops that I'd rather be a free spinster and paddle my own canoe, line like near the end of it. I mean, like, yeah, that's like there's your mission statement.
Yeah,
that character.
But what I really do appreciate about the movie is that I feel like, much like we do with Sex in the City, are you a Carrie or are you a Miranda? Like, I feel like you can like be like, okay, which of these sisters am I more like? And if you are like a, an independent thinker, someone who's very kind of like beats to their own drum, you identify with Joe, and maybe less people, identify with Meg because she is going the traditional expected route. I mean, maybe not entirely expected because she marries a poor guy and not a rich guy, but she still is like, but she's just like, no, I like want to be a wife and a mother, and I like this dude, and like, and that's okay too. It's okay for people to want a more trad wife life as long as it's your choice.
That's what you actually want instead of being societally pressured into it. Yeah, yes. I mean,
so you're saying that Sex in the City is the cougar version of Little Women?
Absolutely.
Little cougars.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm saying that Joe is maybe Samantha in another timeline.
I like that every dude though could just be like, I'm Lori. I'm obviously
every guy.
Yeah.
We're all Lori.
But it's interesting because then it also gets in the idea of like what is love, right? And like when I think back to that exchange like later on.
Maybe you don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more.
Later on in the movie where Joe's talking to Marmee and she just flat out asks her like, do you love him? And like the first thing she answers, well, I think if he asks again, I'd say yes. And it was like, yeah, but do you love him? Right. And then he's like, well, I care more to be loved. I want to be loved. It's like, that's not the same thing.
Yeah.
That is not the same thing. And that's kind
love
of
is reciprocal, right? Like, and she's saying, I just want to I want to take. I don't have anything to give. And
which is funny because in the whole like heartbreaking scene with Timothée, where she just eviscerates his heart, basically, like she's basically pointing out like this wouldn't work and it would be miserable if we did it, which honestly probably true. But like then like she's like having regrets of like, well, I want to be loved though. Yeah, and she's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean you love somebody. Those are different things entirely.
It's the drunk text regret where you're like, you like shoot somebody down and then like then you're like drunk and you're like, oh, I'm gonna drunk text them and see what's good. And like but yeah, I mean, I think that's like it's interesting because I think that the thing that marriage is not in this society, at least, right, like is reciprocal. Like marriage is, women no longer own anything that they own. The guy owns it. The guy has the power. So for love to be reciprocal, it's kind of almost like this radical proposition. But but in order to get married, you have to kind of give up your own side of it as a woman in this world. So it's kind of like there's these two tracks where it's like you have to hope this works out, and it is reciprocal, because otherwise you're kind of giving away all of your power, giving away any power that you had because you signed that document. And that's why, like, the line where she's like, well, we even have to sell our our female protagonists in our novel, like our book characters, to make like an economic because there's nothing loving about marriage as a concept, right? Like, it's just a financial transaction.
Yeah. I've often said for a very long time, and this is me as a married woman, I don't think that people should marry for love more so, stay with me on this one, because you can love someone your whole life and never get married. You can some of the most strong, beautiful, loving couples that I know are people who never got married, but they were each other's like whole world. You get married for one reason and one reason only, and that's teamwork, which was not an option back in this day. It was a business transaction. Nowadays, modern days, you get married for teamwork because you're better and you have more strength and resources behind you when you work together as a team and you share values and you have common goals. Not so much an option for these women. So it's like, but I kind of like the fact that Meg got with the guy that she got with, even if she's like, I just want to be loved, because he does kind of seem more like a teammate to her than someone who's going to like boss her around.
She's a friends of her own class. Like the problems that she gets into throughout this is that the friends that she has are like hella rich and don't get her problems more than her husband being like, because her husband.
Because she's like a mascot to them almost, where like, my friends call me, like, what do they call it? And like
Daisy.
And then Timothy was like, I hate that. And she's like, what, really?
and
he's pointing out appropriately, that like they're just sort of like they're mascotting her, like at best, right? And like she doesn't want to hear that and like is horrified, but she's more like, you get that kind of like multi-layer realization. It's like, oh no, she realizes that he's right, and that's almost worse than him just being a dick.
Yeah.
And a fun fact, one of her children in a later book is actually named Daisy.
Oh, really?
Yes.
You like the name, I guess.
Yeah, no, my wife is a big fan of the books and read them all. And so I've
don't listen to them. Resist. Ad block.
Wow.
But no, I
please read the room, YouTube.
Before coming on, like talking to my wife, like comparing, contrasting, the books a bit, and kind of like getting a better understanding of some of these characters that way. And that was one of the, I mentioned that, and she's like, that's not from the book, but one of her kids is named Daisy. Like, okay.
So
I think so for me, she's the hardest character, the Meg character, the Emma Watson character to kind of get. Like, I feel like the Beth character, pretty easy to understand, right? Yeah. She's like the baby of the family. She likes playing the piano and like
she's a little shy.
She's just cute and shy and whatever. And like, I think the most misunderstood is probably Amy.
Yes.
Which is too bad because like, and again, like,
I don't remember.
There's a reading that says that she's like the pragmatist.
Yeah.
of all of them, right? And there's again, that's a heartrending exchange where Timothy, who's very ready to be painted, by the way, is like, well, why don't you just paint me? And then he's like, and he's just like starts posing.
Paint me like one of your French girls.
Yes. He poses as quickly as if he was like an Instagram influencer, but of the day. But like that, and she is good.
We're the Instagram of the day.
Sure. She is good. That's the thing. But it's like she's like, almost talking herself out of like caring about it because it was like, oh, well, since I'm not a genius, like it doesn't matter. Like,
and that happened a lot back then with the painter, the women who were painters back then.
Right.
Like there were a lot of incredibly talented, especially like I said, that you actually did see that explosion during the Impressionist period.
Frilly dresses everywhere. It's crazy.
And I like that they changed it because the one thing that I do know about the book, she's supposed to be not that good at painting. So I like that in this she's good at painting. And
It's way
like-
better if she
Yeah.
is good and basically has her dream crushed by the expectations of the.
I will
80s.
tell you the anime. They had this scene where this Confederate soldier bursts into their house and says, "You shouldn't." Told her to stop drawing because she's terrible.
Hey, stop drawing.
Everyone's a critic, kid. Don't worry about it.
So the anime is just so insane. The fact that there's Confederate soldiers marching into their house.
Paintings worse than my slaves.
Oh my god!
It's a movie or is it a series? Like
It's a series. It's
I'm
a
not
series.
gonna watch it.
No,
My
yeah,
God,
no,
you watched
no.
the whole series.
No, I didn't. I've only seen like 4 episodes, but like they were like, look
Is
at
that
it.
episode called The Art Critic? Like, what's it called?
That one was about like something about freedom. Basically, they haven't moved to Massachusetts yet because apparently in this universe they're in Pennsylvania, which is wild, which confused the hell out of me. Because the end of the first episode, they discovered that there's a group of Confederate soldiers in town because Joe climbed a tree. And Joe has to take her wounded father so they can find out what's happening with the Confederate soldiers.
Did they read this book or they're just like freeballing? Like, what's happening with this
Fan
story?
fiction. It sounds like
I
it's
know,
like
exactly.
fan fiction.
And I'm
And
trying
then
to
they meet Abraham Lincoln. It's gonna be amazing.
I'm literally describing this at the film festival,
and Ronald
and
Reagan
next
is
thing I
there.
realized,
And they
everybody
get
sitting
along
around me
weirdly.
before the movie started, like has turned to me and is like hanging on every word of my description of what's going on in the show.
Well, they probably thought you were on drugs explaining the plot of this. They were like, "What is this strange man on?"
Oh my god! And then the second episode is about they rescue a kitten while the
all right, that's
Confederate
enough,
forces
that's
are
enough.
amassing outside the town. And
All right, so this is Greta talking about
Please.
the 2 timeline things.
Oh yeah,
Please.
yeah.
I feel like Andy would have just
Thank you.
kept going forever.
Get out of this bit immediately. Thank you.
Remember
Sorry,
a
yeah.
time when I didn't know who Joe March was. She's always been with me. So I read it and I read it again multiple times when I was young. And then I hadn't read it until I was around 30. There was a 15-year, I read it until I was like 15 or so. And then I didn't read it for 15 years. And I read it again. And I couldn't believe how modern and strange and urgent it was.
I mean, I would say the biggest part was how much this book was my book as I was growing up, and how much this book was the thing that really gave me any idea that I would be able to write at some point. And I wanted to kind of reverse engineer the movie so that the last thing that you saw is that girl getting her book, because to me that's the image that in cinema isn't usually associated with the kind of visceral satisfaction of a kiss, but it could be and it should be that it's not girl gets boy, it's girl gets book.
The truth is, it is these 2 different timelines, and people sometimes say, oh, it goes back in time. But actually, the way it's structured is there's just 2 different origin points of the story, but everything moves forward. So one starts in 1868 and everything moves forward, and one starts in 1861 and everything moves forward. So you're never jumping back within a timeline. You're only moving forward.
And I wanted the sort of interplay of the time to be clear so you can follow it, but also in a way to create this sense of everything's happening all at once. The biggest moment for that for me was the Beth death, and Beth getting sick, and this sort of parallel these time periods. It's all moving into one, and in these 2 realities, in this one she comes out alive, and in this one she doesn't. And I always thought that was the starkest contrast too between the magic of girlhood and the reality of adulthood. To be totally honest, there's sort of a narrative issue in the book when you try to make it into a movie, which is if a character gets sick and then gets better and then gets sick and then dies, it's a bit of a hat trick to make it work. So I was like, okay, well, I want to do this because it felt like it also gave it this thing that people intuitively have when someone dies, which is that I've said it, I've heard other people say it. They say, but I just saw them. I just saw him. And it's almost as if presence could inoculate you from death. And cinema is one of the art forms where you can literally have those two moments live next to each other, because that's how it feels in life, even though that's not how linear time works, unfortunately.
Okay, so a couple things. First of all, I enjoy the dual timelines big time. I didn't realize that it was like a contentious topic when this came out. I'm like, are you guys idiots? Like,
Yeah.
apparently, because like
What's
how did you not?
how did you? Oh
Damn it.
no!
I need to start reading these comments. How did you not realize that these were not the same time? It's very clear. Like people have, like, first of all, so Emma Watson
differently,
and Cerise, like they look like exactly the same as they have since they were 16, basically. Peace and love, right? Florence Pugh has bangs, so that's what they did with her. It's like, oh yeah, when she has bangs, she's younger, and like
you can tell she's been through things because she has bangs now.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And I'm like,
okay,
common girlhood moves. We've all been there. We've all had a post-breakup bang moment. So,
and like, I think it works better for some characters than others. That is what I'll say. But I think it's very clear just how she films it. Like how the video is presented, because I definitely early on was like, well, hold on, why is this? The colors are brighter here. Why? Like, and I was kind of trying to figure that out. I was like, oh, I think it's because these are like two different timelines that are happening. Because like clearly it's like, oh, well, they were just hanging out doing adult stuff. Now they're doing kid stuff. Clearly,
yeah. Well, the colors aren't just brighter. It's one of them is like warm. Like there's a warm, almost like filter on it for a lot of the
yeah.
The other ones has a cold, like a very cold filter to it.
Yeah, I was gonna say the one in their younger years, it almost feels like a fire. Like it feels like like the fireplace in their home.
It feels warmer as if like people were remembering fondly their childhood memories. Is how I think of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think it was a more effective use of color correction than, say, Oppenheimer, which there was no rhyme or reason why they changed the color correction. It was just a contrast with the previous scene. And that had no rhyme or reason why. Yeah.
It looks different and is therefore cool. Okay.
And the thing is it looks different, therefore, it's a different location.
Yeah.
Or a different time period. Like I get that. I just felt that they weren't using it as a form of storytelling, whereas this clearly did use it as a form of storytelling.
Greta Gerwig's a better director than Christopher Nolan, so there you go.
She can write women.
Yeah, true.
Oh my god, could you imagine how insufferable a Christopher Nolan period is?
Yeah, just clip me saying that. Only that. And then pair with Jerry Casale talking trash on Chris Nolan too. And then we could really get some views on some of these videos. They're just
Oppenheimer is really isn't necessarily like a period piece. Can you imagine how much more insufferable just a period piece would be? Christopher
Nolan doing a corset number? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan doing Little Women?
Not in this economy.
Christopher Nolan's he's like, can we get
they're so little they weren't even on screen. It's just the dudes.
He brings back Christian Bale.
Yeah. His best guy is Scarlet Fever.
You're like Joe is like a guy, like a mirror instead of Amy. Like
Nolan's so brilliant. He did Little Women, but recast all the women as guys.
And he called it little men, like
little men. No,
big men.
Big men.
This is not Greenland, by the way. I'm not Greenland in this one.
Oh my god.
We do have fun here. Anyway, I like the warmth of childhood. I think is very effective. But first time I saw it, I didn't quite get why it was different. But I was like, well, these are definitely different. And then I was like, okay, because it's like this is the earlier one, and they're happier in some aspects and respects, and like everybody has this close familial ties and stuff like that. I get it.
Well, and I really appreciated how at least the scene where she just viciously fucking slaps Laurie down. That whole scene, the leaves are changing behind them. Obviously, like it's set in Massachusetts and filmed in Massachusetts, but they have it feels like a landscape painting. It feels like the way that they're dressed, and then the thing behind them feels like one of those 1800 style landscape paintings of wood.
It's very impressionist. Like it looks like the paintings that Amy wants to make.
Is it Matisse? Right? Is what I'm thinking of?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
I know about art. I know things.
I've been to them at once.
I was thinking a little more Renoir, but that's just me.
Well, okay. No, but yeah. Oh God, how devastating is that scene though? I mean, like it's almost like, it's so there's so much buildup to it because the whole time you're like, okay, you gonna make your move, man? Like, because I don't know if it's a good idea for you to make that move, but it looks like you want to. And then he does, and it's like, oh, boom, boom, and it all just kind of starts rolling down the hill. And it's heartbreaking because again, she's not wrong. Everything she says is like, you're 100% right, but you're still just breaking this dude's soul down the middle.
Yeah.
Who's like one of your best friends, but like clearly it's that weird power dynamic of like, again, some guys can get away with, having like friendships with women that are not based in romantic love, and some can't. And in the 1800s, doubly so.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's something that's so like weird almost, and I mean, I guess we could almost call it like grooming today in a way, I guess. But like people would decide like this is the woman that I want and this is the woman I'm essentially going to own, but like years before anything could even like before her parents were willing to give her away, which is another. All right, your parent, like your dad owns you, and then
look, we all saw Elvis, we saw Priscilla, whatever it was.
But it's like, there's something that's like, because in the beginning of it, like Amy is supposed to be 13, and he's kind of I'm not saying Laurie's lying in wait because he wants,
and she's making casts of her feet.
Yeah,
I'm sitting here with cast of my feet. I'm sorry, you're
like,
what? You're like, what, honey?
For one, you're
Oh
like,
my God.
it's expected that you're not going to move like more than like like 5 or 10 miles away from where your parents live, right? Like you're probably not going to go to a whole different.
Well, it's a very
Yeah.
it's a very like Protestant idea to the idea of courting. You see it still in like modern Protestant society where it's like you are dating to get married. So the dating process starts very, very young. Same thing with like LDS communities and just like a lot of just like Christian offshoots, evangelical movements. You still see it where it's like, this is the person that I'm going to marry. So we're going to start like dating when we're young. And then when we're of age, we'll get married, we'll have babies, blah, blah, blah. And you do the whole thing. That's always been ingrained. And so it's just like, it's really, there's like a biblical kind of, statue of that. So to like, to be like, oh, like, I like you. And someone be like, no, it's like, what? That wasn't in the book. That wasn't an option.
Yeah.
But it was what I was kind of saying at the top of the show of like, I think a lot of people are like, ooh, Lori got so friend zoned. I'm like, no, Lori didn't get friend zoned. Joe got wife zoned. Like she didn't want it. She didn't want it. And she was just
very clearly never has been built that way.
But that's the thing about like idealization is it's like you can like someone for all of the qualities that they bring and all of the like wonderful things that they are in your life. And then because of the way that we have like built up marriage and lifelong love and partnership, it's like you start to be like, oh, I like all these qualities of you, therefore we are in love and we must have babies. And like, no, there are so many different forms of love. It's very, very clear to me that that Joe and Lori love each other, but not in like that traditional sense. But there's so much love there. And you see the love between like Timmy and Saoirse when they're like filming is just like, you can tell that it's like the love that their characters have and the love that they have off screen. Like it's just such a like sweet friendship. And that is so wholesome and needs to be preserved. And like, we don't have to ship them. They can just be their own thing. We don't have to have ship culture for everybody.
Well, we have Lady Bird. We have Lady Bird, so we can.
Right, exactly.
If you're into that, just watch Lady Bird. You're good.
Well, I mean, and on top of that, right? Like you have the character of Amy, who from the beginning, like written this way too, right? From the beginning is like, I want to marry a rich guy because that's the way I'm going to provide for my family that way.
Yeah, well, I want to remind him I have nice feet. Yeah.
But for her to, I
think Tarantino's Little Women would just be all about the casting of the feet.
I mean, Lori as an option is far better than whatever weird rich guy that that's gonna take her away and own her that she could have come up with otherwise. Meanwhile, Joe throughout the entire book and throughout the the movie and throughout whatever, like all this stuff, right? She's like, I don't want to get married. I don't want to get married. I never want to get married. I don't feel that way towards people. like, you know, I love my family, I love Lori, but not in that way. And then to kind of marry her off at the end, it feels like it's far more almost dishonest. Like it feels very dishonest. Like,
Well, it's
like you're building up
disingenuous to the
something that-
character.
Yeah.
But again, like we covered that earlier, right? But it being like meta contextually, like, oh, this is how you have to end the story, and like, fine, then it'll be this, and then that works because again, you get that sort of like, well, yeah, the story had to end that way because such was the style of the time for the writing, but you still get to keep her autonomy and you get to keep her independence and her iconoclastic nature, that it isn't compromising the character ultimately, because you see that, like, no, that's the book version, and the book version does this, and then the actual woman says like, no, man, I think I'll keep my publishing rights, thank you very much, and like, you know, which is a Dolly Parton move, by the way.
Yeah.
Good on her.
But and I think that what makes that ending so lovely and so great is that the whole book is, and the whole movie is all about how women really don't have that much in the way of choice, and in kind of showing these like alternate timelines, endings, realities, we're showing that it's like you have the freedom of, if you want a traditional life, you can choose that. If you want a non-traditional life, you can choose that. It doesn't matter like what you're not betraying feminism if you decide that you want to marry and have children. Like, you're not betraying the cause. You're making a choice that maybe you originally didn't like that choice, but people can change their minds because that's the beauty and the nature of choice. And I think that that's really cool to show that it's like, it could end up like this, or it could end up like this. It doesn't matter, because at the heart of it, a choice was still made, and it was like a choice that was true to them in that moment. So I don't really see it either way as a betrayal of the character. You know, kids have feelings and then they change their minds, or they don't. You know, it's the way that everyone was like,
there's no objectively right answer for any of
Yeah.
it, right? And that's a lesson that I think a lot of people could learn today.
Oh, totally.
Frankly.
Absolutely.
Well, I think
you
there's a
know?
lot of people, like, even today, that they're like, well, if I did something, that's the right way to do it, right? Like
I'm
that's
just built different.
Well, no, I noticed that with a lot of people, even that I've been like friends with. They're like, if I do something this way, that's the way that it has to be done. And it's almost like their worldview is destroyed by the idea that everybody could be different. Like,
you think that everyone in the world should move through your lens of understanding and of like, well, I was successful at blah, 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 so therefore I have all the notes to the test. And it's like, well, that doesn't really necessarily work for everybody, especially when you come from different classes and races and backgrounds and things that they touch on in this movie and things that they don't touch on in this movie. Like, this is a white woman's story. The way that like these women are moving through the world is going to be way different than the people that are a couple states away from them. And we don't see those stories in this particular movie. And
maybe in the anime we would see them. I don't know.
Yeah, they actually have a black maid in the anime who looks like Aunt Jemima.
Of course, they had to write it because it's a fever dream.
Well, in this they have an Irish maid, and you know, like their maid is Irish, and I think it's I thought it was really funny that I read like this thing that was like the one race that really Louisa May Alcott was kind of racist towards was the Irish.
Yeah,
like,
that's real.
Like she wrote this article,
just like my grandmother.
Well, she wrote this article in a newspaper that said something like it was like you know, I fired my Irish maid because of the limitations of her race or something. And it's like, but at the same time, like her family was like these like really radically progressive integrationists. It's like it's the joke in Blazing Saddles. It's like you know, like, okay, we'll have the blacks and the Chinese, but we don't want the Irish. And it's
right. Well, and how appropriate that the most Irish actress of all time, Saoirse Ronan, play her titular.
That's so true.
Like, could not be more Irish. To have a shamrock and a freaking pike.
Greta said, "Fuck your anti-Irish racism." Louisa May Alcott.
I like Louisa May Alcott coming back and being like, they made this movie woke. I did not intend her to be Irish.
It's so funny.
I do like the quick. There's a quick like almost there's a quick acceptance, I guess, that this is a white woman's story when the mother, played by Laura Dern, is helping out, you know, the a black nurse, and she's like, "Oh, I've never been proud of my country until now." And she's like, "You still shouldn't be proud of your country." Like,
true.
Yeah.
True.
It's also it's it's kind of weird. She's a great actress, but it's kind of weird to see Laura Dern as like the mother's role. Because it's
Oh, I
like,
know.
fuck, it's Laura Dern, dude. Like, I mean, Wild at Heart. Jesus Christ, you know, like,
She's
but she's a
very-
great actress. She's so good. She can do anything.
I don't know when they decided Laura Dern's last fuckable day was and that she had to be a mom now, but like they're wrong for that because Laura Dern
Totally
is so
wrong.
cocky as fuck. She is so hot.
To be
Still.
clear, she can absolutely still get it.
Absolutely, Laura Dern can still fucking get it. Absolutely.
And to be clear, I'm backing up Lauren saying that.
I gotta say though, one thing that did confuse me though is that Laura Dern looks a lot like Glenn Close, but they're sister-in-laws. They're not actually sisters, and so I'm just like, wait, they're not related? Wait, how? But and I don't know how to say her name, but the actress who played Joe actually does look like both of them. So it's like that's absolutely perfect.
They do.
Like,
They
like,
do have like an actual like family resemblance, which I thought was very interesting.
yeah, I mean the rest of them really don't, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very fascinating.
Yeah, and it's well, everybody kind of has a lived-in personality and experience with this too.
Mhm.
I mean, Beth doesn't get too much other than like, you know, being sweet and playing the piano, of course.
And
but,
then
like,
dies. Yes.
They didn't want us to get that attached to her. They were like,
right,
"Look
yeah.
at who would
Look, it
have-"
was the 1800s. You had a 1 in 4 chance of dying, you know?
I totally love how fleshed out every character is because I
Yeah.
feel that in past renditions, you know, Joe is like the titular, like it's like she's the narrator.
It's Joe's
And
story. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really feel like even though Joe is still very much the narrator in a lot of these cases, like the strength of each of these women is they are so very fleshed out. You see so many layers to them. You see the interpersonal, because the thing about, I don't have sisters, but from what I understand about people who have sisters is that you have all the sisters in the same room kind of relationship, and then you have your relationship with your individual sibling. And and I'm sure that this is the same over like any sibling relationship, but for sisters, from what I've observed, it's like, you know, you've got your one sister who's good for this thing, you know, you go to her when you need help with blah blah blah. Your other sister is your mischief sister, and everyone has these one-to-one relationships, and then you get them all in one room into just like one big pot, and somehow it all just kind of cohesively makes sense. But yeah, so I really enjoyed like, you know, the one-to-one interactions between Joe and Meg, the one-on-one interactions between Joe and Amy and Joe and Beth, and how very different each of those relationships were for Joe. But when you get them all in the sense of like play under one roof together during the holidays, and just like everyone's just kind of like bam, 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 like they're really riffing off of each other in a way that's very like, that they're all attuned to each other, even though each person is so very different. Is so it's what makes this whole thing so magical. Like the scenes where they're playing, like get me really emotional.
And it's not just the writing, it's not just the performances, it's the direction too. Like, and the fact that like this is a comfort movie for a lot of people, especially on Letterboxd, which we'll get into in a minute. That like it's like, okay, I get it. That's your review. This is your comfort movie. Right on, great. You know. But like I get it. I fully understand like why it would be, because again, it feels like you're in the room with them. You know, it has that hominess. It has that sort of familial comfort, I would imagine. I didn't really have those experiences myself, but I would imagine that is what it's like.
Like I've heard of family once.
I'm more or less a feral wolf child, so don't take it from me. I want to shout out one more scene, possibly the second most heartbreaking scene, which is between Laurie and Amy, where he's convincing her, don't marry him. And I actually looked it up so I wouldn't misquote it. But like when she just bursts out with, "I've been second to Joe my whole life and everything, and I will not be the person you settle for just because you cannot have her. I won't do it now. Not when I've not when I've spent my entire life loving you." And it's like, oh,
the tide kind of turns. The tide kind of turns for her though, because the one thing she wanted to do more than anything, Joe, is go to Europe, and she doesn't get to do that. It's Amy that gets to do that.
Well, but I think that's such a good, because if that scene hadn't been in there, like it would have been sort of like, it's weird how that was never addressed, and she was like, "Yeah, sure, let's get married." I think, I'm again, the feet sculptures worked.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is such a
I'm glad,
funny.
I'm glad she threw that out there because it makes me believe that Amy and Lori, since that's out on the table, that they'll have a good marriage because they put that out.
They get it out of the way, like, again, like, I just don't want to be your second choice. And it's like, real AF. And honestly, earned.
And he still is like, yeah, I still choose you. Like, okay, there we go. That's
good. Yeah, and then that's powerful, you know, and that's kind of like, it shows you again why everybody wants to be Joe in this movie. And it's like, well, yeah, but like maybe you're like kind of discounting Amy a little bit, you know, like
everyone wants to be Carrie, but we all know that I'm really a Charlotte. No. I see so much of myself in Amy too. Like I really feel like, you know, in so many of the renditions, she's kind of seen as like selfish and bratty and whiny and like, and that's not Florence in this movie. She plays her so much more. I mean, she's got her moments, but like we all have our moments, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
And that's growing up. That's not being the eldest daughter. That's being the middle child and feeling like you're constantly forgotten and like, you know, you're amongst these big personalities, but you're trying to forge your own way. And you have to watch the people above you get everything that they've ever wanted. And you're like, okay, well, when's it my turn? I keep getting the hand-me-downs, you know, blah, blah, blah. So the way that like, she's kind of, you know, the progression that she makes and how she ends up standing firm and like, no, this is what I want. And this is what I need. Meet my needs or GTFO. Like,
or go pound sand. I'll go marry this other bro.
Yeah. And I really like resonated with that. And I see her just as much of a strong character as I see Joe in this movie.
Well, and I also think in this version of it, like Lori is kind of, well, in the book too, like Lori's kind of bratty. Throughout a lot of it.
He's rich.
Yeah.
Well, he's impish, right? Again, in the way that you can be impish when you're rich, and if you're poor, you're like, that guy's an asshole.
Yeah.
I feel like Amy out of everyone is the most on his level. Like,
like,
and I think that it's very real, like what Joe says, but she's like, do you think I'm gonna want to go to all these parties with you? I hate parties. Like, they met because they were hiding in the fucking, you know, like behind the thing in that room. Like, she's not gonna want to do that. She's not. Amy is somebody that would want to do that. Like, Amy is somebody who wants to, you know, live in a high fashion way. Which, you know, Laurie has specific ideas about it, but he's still kind of dressed like a little fucking dandy.
right. Well, exactly. And like, honestly, they're probably a better fit ultimately. Like in that way.
You don't have to have similar interests with the person you end up with, but you have to have the same values or it won't work. I feel that Joe and Lori have the same interests. They have the same kind of personality quirks, but they don't have the same values. Amy and Lori have the same values.
Here we go.
Well,
and that's why I'm becoming a therapist, guys.
I was going to say, you're getting advanced on your new profession.
Yeah.
Well, someone else who has values as many of the users on Letterboxd, of course, which is a social media site for film lovers to talk out with each other about the films they love, maybe the films that they didn't love, maybe the films they compared to some anime adaptation that had like a soldier showing up, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, it is all...
You can't draw no pictures.
I like that there was a critic too. And whatever, it's what it is. This is all a bottom-up democracy. Everyone gets to have their say. Everyone gets to expound on the things they love, mostly thirst posting, and whether or not it was a comfort movie, and whether or not at least 300 of these the women were tall enough. Which is like, wow, that's the review, huh? Okay. These are Letterboxd one-liners for Little Women. Greta Gerwig. I will cast the March Sisters perfectly and make them do intense research into their roles. They will embody their characters. Also, Greta Gerwig. Fuck it. Bob Odenkirk is the dad.
It's always a pleasure when he shows up.
I'm not mad about it at all.
His like two lines are mad funny too. Like the first line is he's like sitting at the table and the guy's like, "Oh, I'm going to California where immigrants are accepted and they have a better life." And he's like, "Fuck it, I'll come with you." And the mom's like, You just got back from the Civil War.
Like the hell you will.
and then the other one where he's like, "That's a perfect friend for me." And
he also gets to say the titular line too when he sees everybody. It's all my little women.
Yeah.
Then the credits roll.
He said
You said it. You said the words.
Just like in Better Call Saul, and he's like, "Better Call Saul," and you're like, "Whoa!"
You said the thing.
It's all good, man.
Oh, there's a lawyer in town that actually has a billboard that's making that's a reference to Better Call Saul. And I'm
I
sitting
bet
there.
you have so many calls.
I wanted to take a picture of this because but I missed it, and it was so incredible. We'll get it again sometime.
Wait.
I want to be a March sister and have my turn rejecting Timotei.
Oh, same. Same. Someone's got to put that little twink in his place.
Yeah, see, he's a fuck boy.
I mean, Emma kind of has that, or the Emma Watson character kind of has that moment with him too, where he like looks at her, he's like, "I don't like that dress," and she's like, "You're a fucking dick." Like every
You see, Matt Brady's big hat is on my side on the whole fuckboy argument.
I thought Meg spending $50 on dress fabric was bad. However, it's even worse when you realize $50 in 1865 is $1,000 today. Meg March spent $1,000 on dress fabric.
I'll tell you guys though, as somebody who does theater, $1,000 might just be $5 in terms of fabric costs. It's a lot, but it's actually nothing.
Fair. Shout out to my dad, who never shows emotion when watching movies, but during this movie, A, cried when Beth died, B, was visibly ecstatic when Bob Odenkirk showed up.
I mean, at least that's better than the other way around.
Cried when Bob Odenkirk showed up.
That's right.
Bob Odenkirk, no! And then he's like, that bitch died. Fuck.
only tears of joy for Bob Odenkirk. Possibly.
More like Timothée Chalamet, marry the wrong sister.
So silly.
How dare you, sir? Or ma'am, I don't know. Amy was sending feet pics in the 1800s. That's true love right there.
Tarantino's Little Women. It's his final film.
It's the second Tarantino reference. We're at our quota, so nobody can make that joke anymore.
Well, nobody said the N-word in this one, so.
Oh, and yet it was the 1800s. Movie based on a book about the main character writing the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct, Caroline.
Just like adaptation. What's up? Boom. Did I just blow your mind? My most toxic trait is that I think I'm a Joe March girl. Writer, feminist, but I'm more an Amy March. Will burn her siblings' most prized possessions if they annoy her.
Real.
You can't get
She
excluded
did.
you can't get excluded by your siblings. You got to regulate.
Yeah.
That's some stone cold retaliation. That's some biblical old school retaliation. Just burned your book. What now? One more, and we have an unofficial trilogy of Timothée Chalamet upsetting the main female lead to be Florence Pugh.
True.
Oh.
Yeah, that's right. Think about it.
Yo, but that moment in Dune 2, right, where fucking I don't think Zendaya is like the most like the best actress in the world. I mean, she's fine, but I don't think she's like, a crazy good actress. That one moment where she like realizes that fucking Timothée Chalamet is giving her up for Florence Pugh, the God Empress of the universe. I was like, oh, I buy that. I buy her fucking like, bro, what the fuck face.
He's like, say what? Say what?
Yes.
What? If a guy doesn't threaten to hang himself after I reject him, I don't want him.
I think that's a pretty easy thing to find.
Yeah,
Like,
it's really common.
Dudes be saying like, oh, you're gonna
I'd
fucking
die
break
without
up with
you.
me? I will literally kill myself.
I'm like, okay.
Now I like you again.
And she's like, I'm lonely. What's that guy up to?
Those are the Letterboxd one-liners for Little Women. Please, 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 please follow the Letterboxd HQ account at Movie Night Extra, where we post stories of all the various movies that we cover on these lovely episodes that we do. And you can chime and opine on there. Ooh, chime and opine. That's good. Then, of course, follow your host there. At Movie Night Extra is the name of the show. His is always Flacco. He's the neighbor boy, so you can find him over there. And he's
now.
off
Hell
Twitter
yeah.
and fucking around with TikTok, apparently. But he is logging all the stuff from this show and lots more. I am the refined nose at Conan Neutron, and I am doing the highbrow, the midbrow, the populist fare. Follow me along for the Criterion Challenge, as well as Film School Dropouts and see what's going on with that. Justice for Joe at right about now too. Jay into World. Watching all the weirdest stuff so you don't have to. Did you log that anime that you saw, or was that just?
I don't know if it's on there yet, but I don't feel like I've watched enough episodes.
Oh my
I want to find out what happens next.
Watch the whole thing.
I've gotten 4 episodes into it. I mean, you know, it's.
Andy, I'm gonna watch it with you so that you'll have someone to talk to about this, and they won't think you're on drugs.
KT wants to watch it after I described it to her. Like, it's so like everything about it is just like. What is happening? Yes.
Well, I do like the idea that they wouldn't make Little Women in the 80s and 90s, right? Because like they were like, well, guys don't want to see this. Guys don't want.
You couldn't make Little Women today. Oh wait.
But like I like the idea that so because they didn't make it in America, even though like Amy Pascal even wanted to in like the 90s. Like I like the idea that they hopped over to fucking Japan and they're like Japan's like, we love Little Women. Let's
we'll make the most wild shit you ever saw. Anyway. Jay in the World, watching all that stuff so you don't have to, maybe you can. Not for me to judge. Lauren is at Lonely Goat Herd, one of my first Letterboxd friends, and an excellent account to follow if you're in Letterboxd. She is the token little woman on this show, unfortunately.
I sure am.
But originally we were gonna have 3 Little Women and 3 guys, and it was gonna be.
Well, they all died of Scarlet.
I was gonna make a Scarlet Fever joke too. I was going for it. I was like, there it is.
Yep.
Hold down.
Just tore through all our Little Women. They all decided to be Beth.
I said you could just fix it.
I
with
was the Joe of the story.
Christina and Becky Rice walking hand in hand, going to go give food to the poor family down the way.
But I said you could cure it with amoxicillin, but they didn't want to listen to me.
They're like, stop mansplaining to us.
Ironically, I'm allergic to amoxicillin. So.
Well,
wow.
Penicillin. I mean,
all the cillins.
Yeah, just better than being Ellen.
Dylan Murphy, you know.
Oh, yeah. That one I'll risk it all.
And let's hear a word from our sponsors before we jump to the plugs.
Tonight's podcast is brought to you by Jebiga, a Balkan Rakia spirit plum brandy that brings Serbia to the American shores in an authentic and appreciative way. Care of Billy Gould, bassist for Faith No More, and Rakia Appreciator. Rakia is a traditional spirit enjoyed at weddings, funerals, and life events. However, more and more it's being enjoyed everywhere on a night out with friends or as a casual drink. Get a bottle today in liquor stores and bars across America. Go to yabiga.com to see where it's available near you. Caterwaul Music Festival is a noisy rock festival happening from May 24th to 27th, Memorial Day weekend in Minneapolis, Minnesota. 4 days of music at Mortimer's and Palmer's. Over 40 bands are playing, including our very own Conan Neutron with Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. Caterwaul Festival is presented by Learning Curve Records and Seismic Wave Entertainment and specializes in noisy rock. 1-day passes and 4-day passes are available for only $180. To see the full band list and to get tickets, go to caterwaul.org.
It's in like 43 bands too, so that's good value.
I want to go to Caterwaul.
You should do it.
Yes,
do it. We're gonna be there.
Do it.
It sounds really fun.
Be kind of weird if I wasn't there, but yeah, these guys are gonna be there too.
Yeah, it was an absolute blast last year, and I cannot wait to see, for this year.
Cool.
There you go. Justice for Joe takes away the plugs, please.
All right. You're watching us on YouTube, so please do the YouTube things like comment, subscribe, hit that bell, and of course, the big ask is to watch the video to the end. That allows you to get to see that great Conan Neutron song, and that allows us to be found by other movie fans. Like it's a good trade. You know, do that stuff. If you happen to be on Twitch, you can do the Twitch things. Throw us a sub. If you happen to have an Amazon Prime account, you can subscribe for free. Does not cost you anything, but actually does help out the channel. So if you're able to do any of that stuff, please do so. Find us on social media. We're on Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and now TikTok. So hit us up over there. Say hi. We will definitely respond. We do have a Discord too. Which I'll be throwing up pictures of Al, is the guy's name, Al Goodman, and he does just all of his advertising is parodies of Better Call Saul. So I'm going to be posting pictures of Al Goodman in the Discord. No, shout out to local attorney Al Goodman.
It's good to have local attorney, our new sponsor.
Yeah, maybe we should.
Good to have a beat. It's good to have an angle. Who knows?
Yeah, no, he looks like a sweet old man who is having the time of his life doing it. So. Good for him, right? We have a Patreon. If you you get that nice settlement from Al Goodman there, throw us some money that we hooked you up with him, and we can.
Wait, did he already become a sponsor? Did I miss something?
Just did.
I was just transitioning. But hit up with our Patreon. You can have access to our after parties, which we never talked about it. Are we doing an after party today? No. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Not for me.
Yeah. That's fair.
Not tonight, Andy. Not tonight.
But you have access to all of our after parties that we have already done, which is exciting. You have access to them forever.
True. And there are a lot of them, and they are normally very fun.
Yes.
I'm not going to sing the song right now, though. So
no, that's fine. That's fine. Because we do need to talk about your music at neutronfriends.bandcamp.com.
Yes, the name of the band is Conan, Neutron, the Secret Friends. We are on tour this month, and if you are in the Midwest, let me pull it up. We got Madison, Milwaukee, Cincinnati, Ohio, Louisville, Kentucky, Chicago, Illinois, of course, Catterwall, Minneapolis. That was established in the Brainiac as well. So that's happening all the back half of this month. So if you're in any of those places, come see us. If not, you can pick up Bandcamp Friday just happened, but Adult Prom with Lung is still available now. neutronfriends.bandcamp.com for all your rock and roll needs. And additionally, I put out a compilation record called Seismic Waves Volume 1 with 15 bands on it that came out just in time for Bandcamp Friday. So that's a little bit of a lesser known thing, but it's a really cool comp, available on CD, LP, and digital. And 2 of those things will be available at Caterwall. The rest of them, meaning the LP, will be in the summer. Records take a long time these days, folks.
And there are some great bands on that that album too. So definitely check that out.
There's a brand new Conan Neutron Secret Friend song on there called Chekhov's Grift. There's a brand new Resurrectionist song on there, which is one of my favorite Resurrectionist songs. There's an Arkway Noise Quintet cover of a Raymond Scott song, which is cool as hell. And Suckling covers a Yes song, which is crazy, which is a Brett Bradford of Scratch Acid. It's a great comp. And I know I'm biased, I know, but it's pretty great. Heat Death kicks it off. Come on, you want more?
Yeah. Like I said, there's some great bands on there. So
you do want more, Andy?
Give it to me. I need more. Volume 2 right now.
That's right. There's a great USA Nails live song on there. It's a Hands Up. There's an exclusive Hands Up Who Wants to Die song. It's pretty great. $7 digital, like 40 cents a song or something. I don't know.
And like I said, those are all rad bands, and I've met most of them in person, and they're all very sweet people.
Is that your criteria? How rad they are? If you met them in person?
You're like,
not necessarily. I mean, I met Steven Tyler, and I don't think Aerosmith is rad.
Yeah.
Steven Tyler definitely has like mom who will let you smoke pot at your friend's house energy.
Yes.
Didn't he get a little like transphobic despite having the song "Dude Looks Like a Lady"?
Looks like a lady. Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway, that's my band and compilation. I also have the show.
Yes, Protonic Reversal, which is behind him, as you can see.
It's behind me, yes.
It is.
You know what else is behind me? The freaking 10-year anniversary of that show, which happened last week, which is what a great segue that was. The episode 388, I did 13 10-minute plus, we'll just say, interviews with Ian Mackay, Steve Albini, Dwayne Dennison, Jennifer Finch, L7, Dale Crover, Marnie Stern, Dave Powell, Bob Bird of Sonic Youth, John Schmershel, Mike Moraski, Silpo Bathtub, Alan Johannes, Queens of Stone Age, Falco, McCluskey, and Cody Willis of Murder Shade Devils, Big Business, Melvins, etc., and more. I'm taking the rest of the month off. I made so just listen to that. Like I did 13 episodes worth of work for one episode, and there's so much stuff packed in there. I decided that I'm going to let the world catch up a little.
Hell yeah. Treat yourself.
Protonic comes back next month. I was going to take a week off. F that. Taking a month off.
Self-care. I like that for you, Conan.
But it's a great episode. If you're remotely into that kind of thing, you should check it out. I decided to do the craziest, most labor-intensive thing possible, and it was, but it turned out well. So,
And of course, that also means you should go to his Patreon and support the show, because you can get once he comes back to doing episodes, you get episodes early, and it's only $1 a month, people, and it really does help out Conan do that.
There's some pretty big stuff coming up too. Like that's another reason I'm kind of recharging a little bit is that was a lot of work. First of all, secondly, I got some big ones coming up. So yeah, $1 a month, pretty hard to beat, frankly. Not to be a dick, but it's $1, man.
It's $1. I mean, that's half of what the Paperboy wanted, and
and Better Off Dead.
Yeah, Better Off Dead.
No, I get you. But
yeah, there we go. And of course,
I didn't realize it was the on topic one. I was strangers to Bernie, but that's good too.
And of course, we got Lauren over here, who's writes all kinds of stuff, and I guess not as much as you were. Is that?
She literally just said she put out a piece today.
Yes. Where can people find that?
You
I did.
This is why I drink.
No, we're good. Yes. So yes, I just published a piece I hadn't written in a while, and then I got really inspired. If you want to also hear how I felt about Saltburn, I published something at the beginning of this year about Saltburn that's a little spicy, but I just wrote a piece about Boy State and Girl State for Merry-Go-Round magazine. I'm very, very proud of it, so go read about that. And if you like my hot feminist takes on that, you can also listen to my hot feminist takes on KT's podcast. We talked
great episode.
We talked about the Green Inferno because I hate gore porn, and then she made me watch an Eli Roth film, and the result may surprise you. That podcast is called What If I Don't Like It, and you should definitely listen to that episode and all of the episodes because they're great.
And to find out if she doesn't like it.
Yeah, find out if I like it.
I was on that same show, and we did Moonlighting, and it was great.
Yeah, it's so good. And then, what else do I have to plug? I'm in a musical, and a burlesque show. So if you're in the Bay Area and you want to come see me do acting, I'm doing a burlesque show at the Golden Bull in Oakland on
the Golden Bull.
May
This is my old local bar.
No way.
I played a lot of shows there too. I love the Golden Bull.
Oh my God, it's great. So the burlesque troupe is run by the person who runs the Gilman in Berkeley. Very iconic.
Oh no, I played many shows there too.
Yeah. So if you're in the Bay Area, please come to the Golden Bull on May 26th. You'll see my boobs. What's better marketing than that? And then and it's a Green Day themed.
Ma'am, this is a feminist podcast. I'm sorry. Can we? No.
Hey, I'm choosing to show you my boobs, man. It is a Green Day.
And we choose to celebrate that. You can also get off, I think it's the 12th Street BART, and like basically walk into Golden Bowl. Like it's so easy to get to. It's
right there.
It's wild easy.
It's going to be a fantastic
30 feet from the entrance.
Show. It's going to be a fantastic show. All of the performers are so like hot and talented, and it's a Green Day burlesque show. It's like better than just listening to the album at home. And then
the band Green Day?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm doing my striptease to Hitching a Ride. So you gotta be there. And then if you want to
not be on YouTube.
Yeah, it won't be on YouTube. This is a live performance only. Also, if you want to see me in other disturbing situations, come see me in American Psycho the musical, which is going to be taking place in July. I'm playing Courtney Lawrence, and it's going to be amazing. And so that's taking place in San Jose with the company is called Bad Musical Theater. Bad, it does not mean bad. It's very good, but it stands for Bay Area Diversity Musical Theater. So come see that show in July.
I thought I was just badass.
I thought it was a Michael Jackson definition. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. It's Michael Jackson bad.
Yeah.
But Lauren, do you have final thoughts on Little Women?
I just love it. It's just like so wholesome and sweet. And like, I mean, I love me a feminism, but I really love me a feminism that isn't ham-fisted and that really just, talks to you like a person, sits you on their knee and is like, let's let's comfort each other through the horrors of the world. And yeah, it was one of my favorite movies when it came out. Cried in the theater. I still get emotional about it today. I think it holds up, and I can't wait to see the anime.
Sounds wild AF.
Yeah.
All right, Andy, final thoughts.
Yeah, I have to say
Oh,
it
this
doesn't
was
have
not
the
the
action
anime.
of the anime. There's no mech suits. No, there's no mech suits in the anime. But no, this was a wonderful watch. I've been I did skip it when it first came out because I just it's not something I would just watch. But then after I've seen Greta's other stuff, I'm just like, oh, I should check it out. So I'm glad I finally had a chance to actually watch it for this. I thought it was really good. I thought I was confused very much at first because I was still drawing the show art when I was watching it. So the time skip was a bit of a shock to me at first. But once I got into it, I'm like, okay. But it also
You're like, there's
gave
no
the
Confederate soldiers. How do I know what time this is?
yeah, no, but what really I appreciated about it was the fact that it could also be read as that's the book that Joe writes in the movie. So is this a flashback or is this the book? And there's enough to go either way on that. It's there's an ambiguousness to that, which I thought was very interesting and kind of adds something to the end of like, oh, which parts were real, which was fake, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because they're all real. They're all fake.
They're all real.
That's
They're
right.
all fake. Come on, man.
Yes.
They're all real.
People are
They're
saying
all
this
fake,
more and more.
man. All right. Conan, final thoughts.
After that, okay, yeah. No, this is a really wonderful non-linear story with strong characters and a compelling narrative. As I said before, my abject disdain for period pieces kept me away from it for a really long time, despite loving Lady Bird. And so that was foolish because this is a great film and there's so much great detail. The production design, we never even mentioned the production design, killer in this, amazing. And as we, so it's so rock solid.
The house,
And-
I gotta show you in the after party. The house looks just like the house, the real Louisa May house.
Oh, cool. Awesome. I think Gerwig does a great job incorporating modern themes of feminism and equality in a very grounded period story. And as we've said, none of it seems preachy or tiresome. So the mood and the story are all there. And I think it's a great multiple coming of age stories set in period drama. It's a really strongly acted emotional roller coaster. There's like quiet devastation paired with earned moments of joy and elation. Every character is well-rounded, rooted, and a little bit lost in their world. And I again, I'm going to hammer home the point that I think Joe and to a slightly lesser extent, Amy, their struggles are like relatable to any artist or musician. Like the unique challenges of being a creative person, especially a female one in the 1800s. It's very well presented here. And it's an incredibly quotable movie as well. It's a really great film, and I don't know why it took me so darn long to see it, but I'm really glad that I did. And I'm really glad that we got our chief Greta Gerwig correspondent, Lauren, back on to discuss it with us, because I think it was
my I wouldn't have missed it for the world. In fact, I played hooky on rehearsal to be here, so
that's
it's very important.
respect.
So we are gonna do an after party.
Yes.
We'll
I can
hop
hang out
on.
for a little bit, and
We'll make it short and spicy, and if the main character's a girl, make sure she's married at the end or dead, either way.
Damn, I wish I was ready with the